Hello YouTube, welcome to a brand new series that I am calling Decomposing Video Games, and today we will be looking at Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, another strong title from the hitmakers Insomniac Games, released exclusively on the PlayStation 5. If you're one of the lucky ones to get a PlayStation 5, you should get to experience this game for yourself. The Ratchet and Clank series has grown quite close to my heart, and I grew up playing the PlayStation 2 titles. Now, times were simpler back then. Most of the games were strictly single player, and you were conditioned to enjoy single player experiences without any of those modern bad practices like fear of missing out, gated content, and just unfinished products. What really impressed me about this series back then, and still does today, is how well executed and diverse it was. You embark on a story with a great variety of weapons, shooting everything inside to collect bolts, upgrading your arsenal, and repeating again for a formula that just seems to work. On top of that, you get some platforming that is satisfying, but not too hard to pull off. You always want to collect more and more to better yourself and test out new weapons. Ask any kid if going from planet to planet defeating bad guys is fun or not, and I'm confident we all know the answer to that. Having said that, the topic of this video is not to reminisce about the old days, but to decompose how the series has grown in all aspects, from technical execution, direction, and legacy. I do strongly believe that Rift Apart is a milestone for the new generation, and is pure bare bones classic fun, and as we all know, this is a rare thing to say today, due to the dominating force of multiplayer games.
Put down the Dimensionator, Nefarious! Put down the Dimensionator!
Let's briefly mention the plot of the game. I'm not gonna go too deep into the story because I don't want to spoil anything. Let's just mention briefly what it is about. Ratchet and Clank are celebrated for being galactic heroes. In the celebration, Clank gives Ratchet and Clank the Dimensionator. This is a device capable of traveling to dimensions by opening rifts. This will enable Ratchet to look for his Lombax race and also his family. Dr. Nefarious shows up and attempts to steal the Dimensionator. Then the story revolves around chasing down this device between playing as Ratchet, Clank, Rivet, and Kid, while defeating Dr. Nefarious and his alternate version, Emperor Nefarious, through many dimensions. There are a multitude of things that we can say about Ratchet and Clank, and to be honest, most of them are good. Starting from the fact that the series has perfected their formula time and time again, shooting enemies, upgrading weapons, and exploring is the most fun I have had in a while in a video game. I literally went through the game, including 100% completion in a weekend, because I couldn't stop playing. Of course, the game is not massive. It can be completed 100% in around 15 hours or so, according to most websites, but still, I can't emphasize enough how glued I was to the seed because the formula is almost perfect. It is clear to see that Insomniac Games took the time to perfect and shine out what the series is known for. The resulting product, from years and years of iteration, let us experience the best Ratchet and Clank yet. Let's discuss the four main characters of the game. We have Ratchet and Clank and their alternate versions, Rivet and Kid. We can clearly see that Ratchet has aged since we last remember him. Perhaps it could be due to the higher definition of their hardware, or maybe just my imagination. But if you think about it, and timeline-wise, it is noticeable that the character has aged, and it really makes sense because the game is a continuation of where we left the story. Ratchet and Clank are still a solid duo with funny and sad moments and focusing on the bond that they both share. Rivet and Kid are great characters too, acting as perfect counterparts. They have their own sense of direction and clear distinctions from Ratchet and Clank. I do hope we get to see more of Rivet and Kid in a future title. Now, let's start decomposing the gameplay. You have your regular melee range weapon that helps you to defeat enemies up close and personal, but most of the time you'll be shooting your way around the different areas. Somehow, I found myself only using the range when enemies got too close or when I remembered that it existed, because shooting is just way more fun. The platforming additions are also welcome, such as dashing and wall running, which is a great way when trying to get a tricky collectible or just to provide you that cool factor as you blaze through the level showing those platforming skills. I felt the urge in my playthrough to explore every aspect of the game and try to get as many collectibles as possible without too much backtracking. Personally, I don't like when games force you to backtrack and block you from certain areas until an item is obtained or collected. These type of games feel as if they're trying to increase the longevity of the game at the cost of breaking the pacing and flow of the story and world. Thankfully, I never felt this way in Rift Apart. There is a variety as well in the different areas that you explore. You go to different planets that are very different from one another, which helps to create a very distinct experience in the exploration. Probably my favorite planet was Corson V, Nefarious City. It has such a cool, distinct, futuristic look that grew in me as soon as I landed on it. It's filled with lights, ships crossing from side to side, and a really nice color palette. I also can't forget about the club in Scars 2, a very detailed place that has many things to see in such a small, condensed area. It really pops out from anything else I have seen in my journey throughout the game.
Starting me trouble here.
The rift element brings a new fresh perspective to the game. Opening rifts to move from place to place is extremely fun and smooth, and is very well executed, specifically when the environment completely changes in an instant. I do have to admit that some of these placements, usually in combat areas, were pretty much useless because the dashing, W combo is just more effective. You can pretty much do anything you want or get to any area in a matter of seconds while also ignoring damage while the dashing animation is happening. I rarely use this rift in combat areas unless it will save me a few seconds of traversal. The arena is a nice break between the story segments to test myself with waves and waves of enemies while also benefiting from bolts collection and just other collectibles that drove me closer and closer to the 100% objective that I set for myself. These collectibles are there to give you certain boosts like sheets for example, and this is just little sheets, just like the old days. From infinite health to infinite ammo, but for some reason it doesn't feel like you're trying to take advantage of the game. It's there because you earn it and you can explore the game while having fun, as it does not feel misplaced or unjust. I do have appreciation for this type of things in video games and I would like to see more of it in the future as well. There is a huge list of weapons with some really cool interesting mechanics that I was not expecting to see. From weapons that pixelate your enemies like the Pixelizer or weapons that slow down time to get headshots for massive damage like the Headhunter, there is a great selection to have fun and fit pretty much any playstyle. As a personal challenge, I decided to use and maximize all of them in my playthrough to have the opportunity to really understand the different mechanics, and honestly, I can say I had fun with all of them, but most of them were extremely fun to use. In my playthrough, I also learned that combining some weapons is the way to go to guarantee maximum damage. For example, a classic combination I used was to freeze cluster enemies and then blast them away with the Glove of Doom. For some reason, I always went back to my usual combo of the Enforcer and Boss Blades, shifting between the two depending on the situation. The armor sets or pieces that you can collect are very interesting as you plan out how to combine the different pieces to give you a boost, maybe melee damage, balls obtained, or even XP. I usually went for the XP boost as I was trying to max all weapons as soon as possible to benefit from the max stats. What I enjoyed the most is the fact that there are virtually no loading screens from beginning to end. And since the story does not really get stale, the game has a perfect pace. I know, this is not the first game to implement no loading times, but it creates such a nice cohesive experience that is hard to put into words. It just feels natural. The story, however, is nice and fast, but it didn't impact me in a way that other games had. Now, this might sound as a negative point, but it is not. There are times where I just want to relax, enjoy a lighthearted story, and just have fun in the actual gameplay without listening to hours and hours of cutscenes and hidden lore. I guess there are times where you want to deep dive into a story with some weak combat, and times where you just want to have the opposite. I also can't describe how many times I laugh out loud on the clever and funny writing the game provides. For my closing statement, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is a phenomenal game. It was a great experience from beginning to end, a strong headline title from the PlayStation 5, and opens up the technical possibilities of what we can see in the life cycle of the hardware. I do hope there is more Ratchet, Clank, Rivet and Kid in the future, and that the legacy continue to live on. These single-player experiences give me hope for the future and allow me to be looking forward to what the series has to offer.